With a dry, cool wit like that, I could be an action hero.
You ready? Yeah, boot it.
Okay, first of all, it's a given, but I must say that art is subjective. The entirety of this video is my own personal interpretation of things. I'm happy to be wrong, even though I am much happier to be right. Also, seeing as how the film is 25 years old, spoilers abound. Now, with that being said, there is a bit of a content warning before we begin.
I'm the king of the world!
In James Clark's book, The Cinema of James Cameron, Bodies in Heroic Motion, it is stated that issues of gender and race are powerfully dramatized and visualized in Strange Days, and the film is a fascinating collision of ideas and approaches. In his introduction to the published scriptment, Cameron explained its genesis. Lenny Nero was born in 1985 when I decided to write a film noir thriller taking place on New Year's Eve in 1999. I was fascinated by the dramatic and thematic potential of the millennium and the idea of a doomsday as a backdrop for the redemption of one individual. I lament and am surprised by the fact that Strange Days is not readily available for people to watch whenever they want. With its cast and pedigree and prescient subject matter, I feel like it can find a new fan base in today's society. It wasn't very successful upon its initial release, unfortunately, and even though there are some problematic aspects and some disturbing content, as a whole, it is definitely worth watching. It was originally released by Fox, which I'm assuming means that Disney now owns it. Come on, Disney Plus, you cowards! Stream this movie in all its R-rated glory. According to IMDb.com, Strange Days is a 1995 movie about a former cop turned street hustler that accidentally uncovers a conspiracy in Los Angeles in 1999. The film is directed by Kathryn Bigelow and written by James Cameron and Jay Cox. In Roger Ebert's 4-star review from October 13, 1995, he starts off by saying, "We know we want it. We want to see through other people's eyes, have their experiences, stand in their shoes." That's the unspoken promise of the movies, and as the unsettling prospect of computer-generated virtual reality creeps closer, it is possible that millions now living will know exactly what it feels like to be somebody else. In Strange Days, Rafe Fiennes sleazily plays Lenny Nero, a former cop turned futuristic drug dealer. Con man and hustler, he deals in clips, POV recorded segments of people's lives through a new headpiece technology called a squid. It taps right into the cerebral cortex, so it's not just a video, it's real-time memory, it's an experience, it's a feeling. Anyone who watches the clip will feel everything the person felt at the time of the recording. Lenny is extremely fashionable. He dresses well. It's all about appearances for him. It's all about how he is perceived. Just like the clips he peddles, it's all about how things appear and are perceived. We also have Mace, the brutally tough and vulnerable chauffeur/private bodyguard, wonderfully played by Angela Bassett. There's Juliette Lewis's character Faith, Lenny's ex-girlfriend and former sex worker that is now a wannabe rock star who is dating eccentric music producer Philo Gant, menacingly portrayed by one of the best voices in the business, Michael Wincott. Tom Sizemore plays a seedy character named Max who seems to work with Philo but is also best friends with Lenny. Bridget Bacco is the tragic and haunted Iris, and Vincent D'Onofrio and William Fichtner play wild-eyed, unfortunate cops. Glenn Plummer has a small but extremely important role as protest rapper, the voice of a generation, Jericho 1. All of these characters are on some sort of collision course at the apparent end of the world. The basic and spoiler-filled setup of the film is that, as already mentioned, Lenny deals in clips. He also gets high on his own supply. He's addicted to clips of when he and Faith were together. He starts the film off going about his business just like he does every lowly night. Soon we meet a frantic and terrified Iris who is desperately running away from the two aforementioned wild-eyed cops. She barely escapes, but not before they find out she was secretly wearing a squid. They're visibly upset, because she was obviously a witness to something. They spend the majority of the film hunting for her and the tape. Iris goes to Lenny for help and slips the tape in his car without his knowledge. Not long after, Iris is brutally attacked and murdered by an unknown assailant. Lenny gets randomly beaten up a few times until him and Mace find the tape and watch it. So, here's how it all mostly fits together. Philo hired Iris and her friend to seduce his star recording artist Jericho 1 and one of his friends. Iris is also made to secretly wear a squid and record the whole night. Philo is also addicted to clips, and he's addicted to power. Recording his main artist with a couple of sex workers seems like a good way for him to feed a couple of addictions, as well as satiate his constant paranoia about everyone. That night, Jericho and the others are pulled over by the two frantic cops, and after some angry words back and forth, the police murder Jericho, his friend, and Iris's friend, as she barely gets away. Max, who works for Gant and is best friend with Lenny, is secretly in love with and having an affair with Faith. He's also the one who maliciously rapes and murders Iris. He also fries a couple other guys' brains, including Philo's. There's a climactic reveal of this and subsequent bloody fight between Max and Lenny that ends with Max falling off a hotel balcony really far to his death. This is all during a giant New Year's Eve bash and potential riot. Mace is being stalked through the crowd by the two cops after she's already given the tape to the commissioner. She's caught and beaten until the commissioner suddenly shows up and says the two cops are under arrest. Fichtner then shoots himself in the head, and D'Onofrio grabs the gun and is about to shoot Mace when a bunch of other cops shoot him dead. Lenny rejects the duplicitous and toxic Faith, and then seemingly realizes he's in love with Mace. They share a passionate, only happens in the movies type kiss amongst a crowd of partiers as we welcome a new year, a new decade, a new century, and a new millennium. The world doesn't end, but it briefly feels brand new. So, even though the film was made in 1995, it was set in 1999 at the brink of the year 2000. Now, for anyone who was at an age in 1999 where they can actually remember anything, there was a high level of paranoia and worry and uncertainty. We had the Y2K panic, which for a while had a lot of people worried that it could be a true global catastrophe and reset us back into the Dark Ages. That specific aspect isn't addressed in the film, but they do lean into the whole end-of-world vibe that was constantly simmering throughout society. Religious fanatics and conspiracy theorists were constantly up in arms, making promises and declarations and warnings of the upcoming apocalypse.
Calls are a little kooky tonight, you know. It's a little after 2 a.m., December 30th, 1999. Second to last day of the whole darn century.
Oh, Jer, hi. Listen, I'll drop the money by tomorrow, next day latest. No, it's a little crazy right now. Would I lie? No, never to you, Jer, never to you. Okay. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Second.
So, Dan, you looking forward to the new year?
Not really. I mean, what's the point? Nothing changes New Year's Day. The economy sucks. Gas is over $3 a gallon. Fifth grade kids are shooting each other at recess. The whole thing sucks, right? What the hell are we celebrating?
When you shoot the clip, you get it to me by Monday, okay? Client wants a guy and two girls, and the guy wears. Yeah, no, I know. He's trying to be original. And the girls, they have to be young, okay? So don't use your mother like you usually do. And yeah, you too, asshole.
Go ahead, caller. You're on the air.
My name's Dwayne. I got New Year's resolution for the police. You know what I'm saying? Hey, yo, 5-0. Better get down with the 2K.
2K, Dwayne. Help us out. What is that?
2K, you know what I'm saying? The big 2000. Coming up tomorrow night. Out with the old, in with the new. See, for the man, no news is good news. See what I'm saying? I mean, he like keep it the way it is, but we gonna take it and make it new. Make it our own. I mean, history gonna start right here, you know what I'm saying? Right now.
Dwayne.
Hey, I wanna give a shout out to, Boo.
You're on the air, Lori.
If you read the Bible, Mark, you'd know that there won't be another 1,000 years. Right now, we're in the last days as foretold in the book of
The
Revelation.
last days. You mean the coming of the apocalypse, right? The rapture.
You only have to look at the signs. There are wars and rumors of
Now,
wars.
just so the rest of us know how much time is left, when is the rapture supposed to hit? Exactly. Is it midnight New Year's Eve?
That's right.
Now, is that midnight LA time or Eastern Standard Time or what? I mean, what time zone has got in anyway?
I pray for you all.
I mean, we're about to enter an entirely new millennium. That's a rare feat. That sort of thing hadn't happened in what? Almost 1,000 years or so? We had no real clue what would happen or if we would survive. None of us were around the last time this had happened. I mean, I guess the world must not have ended the first time around because we were alive enough to wonder if the world was going to end this time around. And yes, I know there's constantly arguments about when the new millennium actually started, 2000 or 2001. But we're not necessarily talking about facts here, just the perception of facts. I mean, isn't that technically what memories are? Just a perception of facts? Bits and pieces of partial facts and moments that are put together to paint a haphazardly abstract picture? Even with the technology in the film, all the clips are still just a perception of facts. They're out of context. It would be like watching the trailer of a film and then seeing, exactly every single thing about the film. It's a collection of moments, of clips, put together to give you a preview of the real thing. Paranoia, perceptions of truth, and worlds at the brink of ending, either metaphorically and or actually, play throughout the entirety of the film and help to build the entire mood and tone of the film. The majority of people living in the world of the film seem to be battling different levels of paranoia.
The issue isn't whether you're paranoid, Lenny. I mean, look at this shit. The issue is whether you're paranoid enough.
Paranoia is just reality on a finer scale.
Philo, for example, is constantly paranoid and secretly recording all those around him. He lives his life in clips, seemingly only believing what happens around him if he can watch it after the fact in a clip. Lenny is a mess of a human. He's paranoid about Faith being with Philo. He's paranoid about the business he deals in. He's like a drug dealer or a con man that is always one step away from possibly being arrested or killed. The two cops are paranoid and frantic incessantly, just eating away at them. The people in this world are paranoid about the world possibly ending, and the main characters in the movie are also paranoid about their own personal worlds possibly ending. The two cops' world will cave in around them if the tape of them murdering Jericho 1 gets out. Philo is desperately trying to keep control of everything and everyone around him. He's terrified of his own world changing or ending. Lenny seems to be constantly trying to outrun an inevitably sad or tragic future. It feels like he can't sustain this lifestyle for too long, but he's constantly living in the past whilst avoiding the future. He watches clips of him and Faith together whenever he needs a quick pick-me-up. That is a world that he is terrified will end. Later in the film, when May starts destroying different tapes of him and Faith together, he freaks out like a drug addict being forced to watch as their stash gets flushed down the toilet. All these characters are clinging to a world that is about to end in one way or another. Perceptions of truth echo throughout the core of the entire film, pieces of a mystery that are revealed to be a larger conspiracy that could open the floodgates to numerous world-changing repercussions. Lenny's clips of him and Faith are just the happy or pleasurable moments, but it's obvious that there were bad moments as well because at some point, Faith left him and eventually went to be with Philo. So we get the perception of happiness in the relationship, because that's all we're briefly shown. It manipulates us, at least initially, to root for Lenny to get Faith back. We have no clue why she left though. Was Lenny a burnt-out clips addict back then too? Did that lead to their breakup? Whose fault was it? Maybe Lenny was a horrible boyfriend and it was good that they broke up. That is never revealed. It's a clip we don't get to see. When we first meet Irish, he's terrified and running away from the two cops, but we have no clue why. It's not until much later in the film that we get to see her record a clip and find out what led to that terrifying chase. Throughout the majority of the film, the perceived fact is that Max is truly Lenny's friend and trying to help him. And then we find out he truly is a psychotic monster. He's even more villainous than the perceived villains of the film. We're led to believe that there's going to be a climactic confrontation between Lenny and Philo, but that's a clip that doesn't end up existing because Philo's end is actually quite anticlimactic. He's vegged by Max. His brain is fried, a mushy pudding brain trapped in his own clip addiction, a sort of clips overdose. The numerous uses of POV filmmaking is a tool to get us to feel what it's like to record and or view a clip, but it's also a way to only show us exactly what we're allowed to see at any given moment. We can only look ahead through the eyes of whoever we're experiencing things with and nothing else. It's out of context and only exists in the moment, just like our own memories. It's all perceptions of facts. We don't remember things in an entire narrative. They don't play out in our heads like a movie. They play out in clips, brief snippets. Sometimes they can be distorted. Sometimes we'll only get small, out of context moments. Sometimes we will convince ourselves of a perceived truth that might not be accurate. In a way, many of us are addicted to clips. Wait, did this person just step out of the Matrix to beat up Lenny Nero? Wait a minute. Lenny Nero? Neo, Nero, Nero, Neo, Neo, Nero, Nero, Neo.
And I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out. Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ,
That right there is the mail. Now let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay? Pepe Sylvia. This name keeps coming up over and over again. Every day, Pepe's mail's getting sent back to me. Pepe Sylvia, Pepe Sylvia. I look in the mail. Well, this whole box is Pepe Sylvia. So I say to myself, I gotta find this guy. I gotta go up to his office. I gotta put his mail in the guy's goddamn hands. Otherwise, he's never gonna get it. He's gonna keep coming back down here. So I go up to Pepe's office, and what do I find out, Mac? What do I find out? There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, oh, shit, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia, you gotta be kidding me! I got boxes full of Pepe!
Strange Days takes place in 1999. The Matrix was released in 1999. Both deal with the duality of who we are, perceptions versus fact. In Strange Days, people are different in real life and in the clips. Just like we're not the same in our memories are a perception of us. In the Matrix, people are different in the real world than they are inside the Matrix, which is just basically constructed reality, virtual memories. Once again, the perception of facts. This is where some of Lenny's perceptions of reality are shattered. He finds out the truth about Max and about Faith. It's no coincidence that numerous mirrors are shot and destroyed during this scene as Max tries to kill Lenny, destroying the perception of reality or facts to reveal the truth. When Max's wig is torn off during the climactic fight, he appears shocked, distracted, and maybe even disgusted. He can't handle reality. He was also obsessed with recordings and reflections of who he was, which wasn't actually who he was, the cliched duality of man, the way we reflect ourselves to others versus who we truly are. We show clips of ourselves to everyone we interact with. We show them a perception of facts, until we enter the real time and stop relying on clips for the truth. That's when the mirrors shatter and we see the actual truth. Factual reality.
You know one of the ways that movies are still better than playback? Because the music comes up, there's credits, and you always know when it's over.
Once again, going back to Roger Ebert's review, you cannot share someone else's reality without abandoning your own.
You're gonna get yourself killed for this. Huh? For this toxic waste, bitch! What the fuck are you doing? Look, this is your life. Right here, right now. It's real time. You hear me? Real time. Time to get real, not playback. You understand? She doesn't love you anymore. Maybe she did once, I don't know, but she doesn't now. These are used emotions. It's time to trade them in. Memories were meant to fade, Lenny. They're designed that way for a reason.
Strange Days hits harder now than when I was in my teens and first watched it. In many ways, actually, but especially for someone that has had and lost love. For someone that is in love with a person that doesn't love them back anymore. We would do anything to hang on to the good memories we had. The shared moments that meant something, a movie we watched together, a song we both liked, a meal we loved. It's all connected to moments. It's a form of emotional nostalgia. We block out all the negative shit that led us to the current moment because that doesn't feel as good as the bits and pieces that we're trying to hang on to. It's all clips, like the recorded videos in the movie. Scenes, out of context minutes that don't actually make up a whole, because we don't want the whole. Because the whole had good, bad, and everything in between. We had all that, now we just want the good. We live in the clips. We wouldn't record the bad moments, and even if we did, we wouldn't keep or watch them. So we record and watch the good. It's an impartial picture. But if it was also truly good, then why are we not still there? If there was no bad, we wouldn't be longing to be back there. It's like our favorite movies. They hold up no matter what. If they weren't our favorite, we wouldn't constantly rewatch and talk about them. We don't binge watch a TV series over and over again unless we love it. We don't reread horrible books. We don't put songs we hate onto a playlist and then press repeat. We try our best to not revisit memories unless it brings us joy. Otherwise it's called trauma, and people literally seek help and get medication to try and get past trauma. We don't want to get past nostalgia. And yes, nostalgia can be problematic sometimes. Too much of it means we're not living in the moment. We spend all our time longing for the days of yore, like Lenny in the film. It's an emotional drug that he's addicted to. And as much as he likes to dress in fancy clothes and give off the perception of success, he's stuck in a rut. His addiction is causing him to slowly rot. But nostalgia is not all bad. Okay, so here's a little bit about nostalgia. Like I mentioned, there can be some truly problematic aspects pertaining to nostalgia. Also, it seems to have become more and more popular in film and TV and books these days to really try to cash in on nostalgia. Stranger Things, Ready Player One, more and more remakes of films from the 80s and 90s, more and more films and shows that take place in the 80s and 90s. And they play like the greatest hits of nostalgia. All the imagery and music and references are usually the most popular and recognizable aspects from those times. So there is some backlash out there regarding nostalgia. It can seem like a cheap way to try and gain familiarity with an audience. And I understand it. live in the moment and all that. But I'm going to speak a bit on how nostalgia can also help, at least regarding me and my battles with mental illness. Back in 2013, I had a bit of a mini breakdown. My severe OCD got the best of me and I was about an inch away from hospitalization. I've slowly fought through it though, but I'm still severely affected by it in some ways. But I've also made a lot of progress over the years. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't. But at the time of my breakdown and for a few years afterwards, I wasn't functional. Now I'm kind of functional in most ways. I used to have massive issues just leaving my apartment, going out in public, interacting with other humans. So how does this tie into nostalgia? Well, I use nostalgia, mostly movies and music, to remember how I was before my breakdown. As long as I can remember, I've had some OCD, and I mean actual OCD, not the random quirk that Tumblr kids post about when they're a bit anal about something or slightly perfectionists.
Hot.
As a child, I would lay awake for hours and count every single letter on all my movie posters to make sure that there was an even number of them. Sometimes I would even count the letters of the words people said to me in conversation and desperately hope for an even number. But I was functional. I would touch things, I would go out, I would have fun. All of that ended for a long time after my breakdown. So, nostalgia helped me to remember that I was able to go out and touch things and interact with people and have fun, and that doing those things did not kill me. I know it might sound extreme, but that's how OCD works. So yes, nostalgia is a hell of a drug and it can remove us from reality in some unfortunate ways. But it also helped me to fight my brain, my nemesis and my best friend, better than any pharmaceutical drug ever could. Because if I was functional then, I could be functional again. And nostalgia, music and movies would constantly bring me back to a time in my life where I was in control of my broken brain instead of my broken brain being in control of me. Movies especially, they're like time travel. They could transport me back to a specific moment in my life. Clips that I could vividly see in my mind. Do I remember the movies because of the moments, or do I remember the moments because of the movies? But I also understand that too much of the nostalgia can cause me to regress in certain ways, because I also still need to be constantly moving forward. It's like a medication. You need the right dosage in order for it to work. In the film, Lenny keeps his clips in a shoebox of digital memories. I come from a time, I'm not sure if it's still something that's done or not, where lots of people would have a shoebox shoved under their bed filled with bits of their memories, notes, trinkets, concert tickets, etc. Meaningful items from special moments in their lives that they wanted to hang on to. There's a brief moment in the present day of the film where Lenny is talking to his ex Faith and she briefly gets half naked to change. It seemingly has no effect on him, he just keeps talking to her like nothing is happening. But early in the film, he was watching one of his recorded memories with her where she also got half naked during a conversation, and it clearly turned him on immediately. He feels more pleasure in the video than in the real life moment. The past, the memory, and the now unreal aspect gets him excited. Living in the moment is nothing for him. He's overdosing on nostalgia. There's a brief moment in the film where Lenny gives a clip to a man who has no legs, and we get to see what the clip is. It's of someone running along the beach, looking down the beach and then down at their legs. Then we see the effect it has on the man. For a brief moment he can feel what it's like to have legs and to run down the beach. It's a quick, sweetly innocent scene in a mostly nihilistic and cynical movie. For a moment, the audience realizes that some good can come from this technology. It's not just pornographic or thrill-seeking. As much of an unhealthy obsession and addiction clips are, they can bring people nice moments of happiness. Just like how drugs in real life can be addictive and painful and life-ruining in some ways, some can also have medicinal, physical, and/or psychological benefits. There's a gray area. And just like nostalgia, you need to find the right balance. the amount that will benefit you, but not too much that it'll hinder you and hold you back. But sometimes, we just need to run down the beach. Again, from Clark's book, he says, Strange Days is a film about filmmaking. Then he goes on to reference Deborah German and Sean Redman's study entitled The Cinema of Kathryn Bigelow, Hollywood Transgressor. In it, they say of Bigelow that she is a filmmaking artist who is able to transcend the collective, industrial, and commercial constraints of the Hollywood cinema machine to individually author her films in innovative and transgressive ways. Her political play with genre and gender is self-conscious, and the signs of her authorship are in knowing presence in her film work. They also say that Bigelow's cinema of transgression, then, is a contradictory or paradoxical activity. On the one hand, Bigelow subverts the codes and conventions of dominant film form, in part through employing a range of art cinema devices, self-reflexivity, self-conscious camera work, the corporeal traces of her authorship. On the other, she accepts and pays homage to these codes and conventions by reveling in this exploration and execution. Once again, going back to the review by Roger Ebert, some of its scenes are deeply disturbing, involving the audience as voyeurs during scenes of death. But isn't that what we do during all the thrillers we attend? Get entertained by the sight of violent action? By making the process explicit, Strange Days requires us to think about it, which is more than all but a few movies can or attempt to do. Bigelow directs the film with such energy that we can't take our eyes off it. It fits the mood, theme, and narrative perfectly. Just like people addicted to clips in the film and people obsessed with reality TV today, Bigelow gives us a tour de force of intrigue, thrills, and debauchery that we can't look away from. Bigelow has made a career out of making movies like The Men Do, better than The Men Do. There's a good chance she had to prove that she could pull off the male gaze in a macho acting film in order to make the sort of film she wanted. In Point Break, she deconstructs aspects of toxic masculinity and examines this sort of complicated loyalty and love between platonic males by giving us an extreme and wild portrayal of violent, toxic masculinity buried amongst some noticeable homoeroticism. She shows the people what they want to see, and then in between those moments gives us some big ideas. Nuance and social commentary buried beneath extreme violence, excessive nudity, and sexuality. In Blue Steel, back in the late 80s, she showed the world one of its most dangerous and frightening real-life villains. An entitled, fragile white male with a gun. A film in which the protagonist is a young, rookie female cop, two ends of a spectrum on a collision course. Bigelow paved a path for women directors today, especially those directing action-type films, and because of that path, they can now forge their own way. For example, look at the difference in how Wonder Woman and Harley Quinn are filmed in their male-helmed ensemble appearances compared to their female-helmed solo outings. In their respective individual outings, Wonder Woman and Birds of Prey, their outfits are less sexualized. They're not constantly filmed at low angles with the view focused on their butts. When filmed from the front, the male directors have the frame centered on their chests and up, whereas women directors frame them like a regular human being instead of just a sexual object. And both solo films are huge improvements over the male-gazed ensembles.
Well, we always did share a love of the dramatic, didn't we? Look at us now! But don't you see? You're trying to kill me. I'm the only one who can protect you! You know you can't stand on your own, Quinn. You're not the type! But me, you need me!
Here's the thing, Romy baby. Your protection is based on the fact that people are scared of you. Just like they're scared of Mr. J. But I'm the one they should be scared of. Not you, not Mr. J. Because I'm Harley fucking Quinn.
That was super embarrassing.
Sure was.
You think you can beat me? You're a fucking moron.
I'm sorry, kid. And I'm sorry I tried to sell you. That was a dick move. For what it's worth, you made me want to be a less terrible person.
Ew.
If we're apologizing for shit, I should tell you something.
Excuse me?
I stole something from you. You slippery-fingered little turd. I took your ring. My ring? Dope.
These women directors don't need to have a male gaze from a female POV anymore. Bigelow shouldn't have had to prove to people for the better part of 2 decades that women directors can make action films. She shouldn't have to be the first, and so far still, only woman to win Best Director. But she did it anyway, and she did it with style. Okay, I'm not going to dive deep into the rape scene. It is disturbing, there's a lot to unpack there. I am not qualified to comment on it in numerous ways, and it wouldn't be appropriate to do so. So I'm going to give a quick possible analysis of it, and then move on entirely. So the scene in question involves a woman being attacked, and the attacker is wearing a squid, recording everything. He then puts an additional recording device on her head and jacks her into his feed. So now she is forced to see herself get raped and murdered from her attacker's POV. She also can feel everything he feels as well as what she feels. It's horrible, torturous, and distressing. This scene could be Bigelow's commentary on how a lot of directors get off on filming rape scenes and how many people want to watch them in movies still. Seeing as how numerous male writers are still writing into scripts, unfortunately. When you get deep into the psychological aspect of it, Bigelow could be telling them that they can't top this scene, so maybe it's pointless for anybody to keep trying. Once again, like she's done with other movies, she pretends to male gaze it so as to then say something more about it. I mean, back to Point Break for a moment. Bodhi and Utah both wanted to make out with each other more than any other male action film character since the volleyball game in Top Gun. And yet they're also seen as typical macho action film dude bros. There's something beneath the surface, something that's always breaking the waves in her films. Also, the 3 most prominent women in the film are Iris, Mace, and Faith. Iris films the murder of Jericho 1. She also ends up having to film, view, and experience her own attack and murder. Lenny is holding out hope for his ex Faith. He's trying not to lose Faith, while Philo and eventually Max are trying to keep the faith. And Mace is tough, protective, painful, and straightforward, a blunt weapon that will stop anyone in their tracks. Bigelow paints a picture of each character just with their name.
All I'm saying is, you don't know how high up the food chain this thing goes. I heard stuff.
What stuff?
You know, I heard stuff. Smoke, rumors. I've heard stuff. I've heard stuff about a death squad. A group of guys, cops, loyal to the hardline school. Guys have had too many years of City Hall and review boards and the goddamn media pissing down their necks, suspending cops right and left, tying their hands, while out of the other side of their mouths, these same people are squealing, save us, do something, you fucking morons, crime is totally out of control.
Who had the camera? Where was the camera? Oh my God, they caught this on camera.
It was one of the most disturbing things that we'd seen on video.
The videotaped beating of Rodney King had left many Los Angeles residents outraged.
It was like the first time we had actually seen it, so it was shocking, but at the same time, it was wonderful, because now we Americans, we African Americans, we had evidence of our claims of, injustice and mistreatment.
The idea of watching that video originally, give me your reaction to when you saw the Rodney King video. Give me what you felt initially.
I was waiting for somebody to stop it, and the fact that no one came and no one was able to stop it. The Rodney King video in and of itself ignited a culture of wanting to get involved.
I don't think you'd be exaggerating to say this was the first viral video recorded by an individual on amateur equipment.
Let's be clear. Then, now, and forever, police brutalizing and murdering innocent black people is a problem. But what is also a major problem is that these days, the rest of us could see a video like the one in the movie, and there would still be a large number of people supporting the cops' actions. Say their names. Unfortunately, their names don't matter to a bunch of people. George Floyd didn't matter to a lot of people, unfortunately, even though he truly did matter. Rodney King didn't matter to some people, even though the whole world saw it. Look, the most shocking aspect of the Rodney King video isn't what was happening, it's that they were finally caught doing it. It wasn't a new thing for police brutality to happen at that time, it was just a new thing for a camera to see it. Yes, I know that it seems like police brutality has increased in the last few years, but in all likelihood it's just that the public's access to police brutality has increased. What really sucks is that even though we're catching more and more of it on tape, it doesn't seem to be changing anything. It's all the same. Normally in a sort of panoptic society that we live in, where everyone has a camera, people all act accordingly, as if they might be always being filmed. But that doesn't seem to change anything for police brutality, or the cyclical way society reacts to it. Outrage, protest, empty promises of drastic and positive change, and it all seems to unfortunately repeat itself. The bad apple police are acting the same with or without cameras. That's a problem. At the end of the movie, other cops finally step in and shoot D'Onofrio when he's about to shoot Mace. At that point, they had no choice. Is it because they needed to distance themselves from the two bad cops? There had to be some previous indications that those two cops are loose cannons. They don't just do what they did because they're having a random bad day. But throughout the majority of the film, Lenny refuses to go to the police. He used to be a cop. He finally tells Mace to bring the tape to the commissioner because of how straight edge and non-corrupt he specifically is. Lenny admits to being a crooked cop, and it's hinted at that the rest aren't trustworthy either. But if the commissioner is so straight edge as a cop, how corrupt do the rest need to be before he finally takes action? He initially refused to watch the tape when Mace gave it to him, and he had it removed from his presence. But for someone to go straight to the commissioner instead of just going to a regular cop could have bigger meaning and deeper implications. There's a good chance he had an idea that there was an important reason she came to him. He had to know there were issues with his police force in some way. It would be naive to think that the two rogue cops didn't have prior issues or problems. They must have been known to other cops and the commissioner. So, if that's the case, how much blame lays at the feet of the other cops or the commissioner? And did some of the other cops want to speak out earlier, but were afraid to? Yes, there are unfortunately bad apples amongst the police. And yes, there are some good and heroic ones. Yes, there needs to be changes to the system, better screening and training and de-escalation procedures, for example. Yes, there needs to be a better way for the good cops to be able to speak out. And yes, some cops would still just refuse to speak out. All can be true. No, you don't necessarily need to burn down the entire orchard, but rot does spread. And if you don't get rid of that rot quickly and efficiently, it will spread throughout the entire orchard. It's like weeds in a garden. There can still be good things growing in the garden amongst the weeds. But if the weeds are left to flourish, they eventually overtake the garden. It makes it almost impossible to see the good stuff that is unfortunately surrounded by all the weeds. This film tried to show a potential future where the rot had seemingly spread throughout the orchard. The weeds were clearly already overtaking the garden. 25 years later, how would that garden look? Jericho 1 wouldn't have mattered to some people, even though he was murdered in cold blood, on tape. It was fiction at the time of the movie, but now it's all too real. Look, I know that in the film the video showed Jericho 1 getting shot in the head and being murdered by the police, but did he have any pre-existing conditions? Were there any comorbidities involved? Well, yes, he did have a pre-existing condition. He was black. Unfortunately, in the world, and specifically in the US, being black is a comorbidity. The fact that the film takes place in 1999, and many characters randomly reference that as being the end of the world, is possibly the film trying to say that this was the end of a world, and the start of something new. Unfortunately, as we all know, things didn't change. Police brutality and murder of innocent black people became more prevalent, even though, like I said, it was caught on tape more and more throughout the years. We became more addicted to reality TV and film footage of real-life events. We want to see this stuff. We can't seem to turn away. There's a part of us that doesn't want it to end. Please don't cancel our favorite show. It's a real-life version of The Running Man. In that film, comics could win their freedom if they survived a televised event where they were being stalked by homicidal maniacs. Sadly, it seems that in the US, at least, instead of comics winning their freedom, it's black people trying to win their existence by surviving televised or recorded events where they're being hunted by some homicidal maniacs. Save the orchard before it's too late. Weed the garden before it's all just weeds. Work harder to promote the healthy growth of good apples, safe from the rot. In a way, the film did show the end of the current world and predicted the new world that we live in now. and I don't feel fine.
You know one of the ways that movies are still better than playback? Because the music comes up, there's credits, and you always know when it's over. It's over!
The only truly strange thing about the days in this movie is that there's a happy ending. There's justice for the villains. 25 years later, and the world is still looking for its Strange Days happy ending. In the film, Lenny turns his back on nostalgia and lives in the moment. The good guys win. The bad guys are found out and die. The movie ends happy. The playback of real life is still trying to get to that point. A black woman giving the beat down to two racist, corrupt, murderous cops at the end is cathartic and, once again, shows that black women will save us all. And the crowd, led by a black man that jumps in to help her at the end, feels like decades and decades of stress finally being released and justice being taken back. But here's the thing, this isn't the US elections. We shouldn't have to wait for and rely on a black queen to save us after whiny, toxic dudes continuously screw up and sometimes fail up. Also, the romantic subplot doesn't really work. A platonic romance, loyalty amongst friends, does work. There's no reason for Mace to seemingly be in love with Lenny. I mean, don't get me wrong, I completely understand how someone can unfortunately fall for the wrong person sometimes, regardless of how toxic the other person may be. I also know how some friends will stick around whilst their friend constantly self-sabotages their life. So I might be reading way too much into this, but that's literally what this is all about. James Cameron is on record stating that this is a love story. At one point, Lenny asks Mace if she understands what it's like to love someone that doesn't love them back, and she says she does. On the surface, Lenny is referring to his love for Faith, and we're made to believe that Mace is in love with Lenny. But how about this? Mace does love Lenny, as a friend. It breaks her heart to watch him basically rotting away in front of her. She loves him, but he doesn't truly love himself. Also, the other person that Lenny loves that doesn't actually love him back is Lenny. Lenny is, on some levels, a delusional narcissist. He's all about image and appearances, how he looks in real life, how people look in the clips. He doesn't take responsibility for his mistakes, he doesn't admit to his toxicity. He's in love with himself, but he truly doesn't love himself. He has no actual respect for himself, until maybe a little bit at the end. He does try to have a sort of a redemption arc. He thinks he's in love with Mace, which leads to the romantic Hollywood kiss ending. But that's just Lenny trying to fix and save himself. To show himself that he does care about others and that he's a new person, to go along with the new year and the new millennium. Women shouldn't have to be the redeemer for toxic men. It's not their job to fix or save a broken man. That puts too much responsibility on a woman, and it removes too much responsibility from the man. He isn't putting an effort to actually change who he is. He just needs the love of a good woman, and he'll miraculously be a hero. It's also not up to black women to make a difference and save the world. Up until just a few minutes earlier in the film, there was still the feeling that the world might end at midnight. Right around the same time, Mace has her heroics and is beaten down for her troubles. She stands tall, the villains die, and the world is saved. I believe, in a way, it could be trying to be empowering, even though it seems to accentuate a problematic trope, one that still seems to exist in the real world, especially in the US. Lenny gets lucky, while the weight of the world, his redemption, and justice that could make or break society with his outcome, is dumped upon Mace's broad, muscular, spectacular shoulders. Also, even though it was happening concurrently with the making of this film, the fact that Bigelow was married to and working with known narcissist James Cameron makes certain aspects of this film seem more than just fictional. Mace works with, or at least helps, Lenny, even though she knows who he is. Bigelow more than likely knew who Cameron was at the time, and, like Mace in the film, at least on the surface level that Cameron was aiming for, she loved him no matter what. It's why when years later, after they had been divorced for a while, and Bigelow and Cameron went head-to-head at the Oscars for Best Director, for The Hurt Locker and Avatar, respectively, it was a better story arc than any writer could have come up with. When Bigelow won, making her the first woman to ever win Best Director, it was a fitting end to that specific story. A strong warrior woman, like Cameron loves to put into his films, merged with a tough but vulnerable woman that has a love or fondness with some sort of toxic male but comes out on top anyway, like Bigelow likes to put in a lot of her films. I like to believe that soon after the ending of Strange Days, Mace set Lenny straight. She wasn't there to fix any man, and if that's all he wanted, then his perception of reality was as skewed as his addiction to clips. Lenny needed her, she didn't need Lenny. I wouldn't be surprised though if the romantic ending was mandated by co-writer and producer James Cameron though. Many artists that create art about love do it for a number of possible reasons. Some of us are inherently lonely, we're looking for love and failing, so we live vicariously through our characters. Other artists might be recently or often heartbroken in their pursuit of love, And some just might be narcissists that thrive off of being loved and having that attention. And for the record, I'm a huge fan of all of James Cameron's films, and the love story in his Titanic still messes my shit up each time. You jump, I jump. But I'm also sure there's a certain level of selfishness and narcissism in Jack and his love for Rose. It's still powerful and sad, but it might be worth a deep dive.
I'm the king of the world!
So, where does this leave us? It's sort of fascinating and ironic that I'm recording this basically 1 month before we go from 2020 to 2021. This has been one of the most hellacious years that most of us can remember, and it's probably one of the few New Years where a lot of people might actually be hoping the world ends because things couldn't possibly get any worse. But these are just numbers on a calendar and a clock. It's a social formation. It is something that has power because we believe in it and give power to it. Just like money, and political status, and religion, and grades, and almost everything else. Something only has power if we believe in it, or if we believe it to have power. It's like Freddy Krueger's reason for existing in the real world and Wes Craven's New Nightmare. As long as they were making movies about him, talking about him, scared of him, he had power. It brought the series full circle because at the end of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy finally defeats Freddy by looking away from him, not giving him attention, not giving him power. Don't get me wrong, there are things in this world that have power even if we don't believe in them. Someone can not believe in the deadly power of a bullet, but if it's fired out of a gun into them, it will still cause damage. Just because some people don't believe in a virus or pandemic, it doesn't mean they can't still get sick or die from it. But there are many things we give power to. Social media has tremendous power because we believe it is powerful. Our random bits of memory of certain moments have power because we give it to them. We'll miss an ex or a former lover because we give power to the positive clips that we constantly replay in our minds. A movie we saw as a child and loved still has power over us because that's how we remember it. Sometimes we're afraid to rewatch it because we don't want it to lose that power. Certain ideologies have power because we allow them to. We're afraid to possibly change the way we feel or think about something because we've given power to a certain line of thought. Change can be scary. We don't want that world of ours to end. We're living in the past while worrying about the future. The only living in the moment we get are current videos that other people captured, but those are still in the past, even if it's only by a few minutes. We give power to other people to show us the now with their own eyes instead of just using our own eyes. We fetishize other points of view that help to solidify the narrative we want to see, to give credence to our own ideologies. I feel that sometimes a lot of us are afraid to truly live in the moment because it may take away the power of what we want to believe. If we live our life through clips, we can edit them together into one full narrative. We create a puzzle that we want to see. In Strange Days, Kathryn Bigelow shows us that the true big picture, the actual honesty of reality, isn't revealed to us until we stop looking through other people's eyes and stop existing through bits of memories and instead start experiencing the world as it happens. Look away from the screen, unless it's my video you're watching, and look out the window. Stop basing our narrative on the perception of facts, and instead look for the whole story. Give power to the things that matter, exist in the real time.
Memories were meant to fade, Lenny. They're designed that way for a reason.